Hello, Robs. We're back with the Creature Catalog, a Monster Watcher's Guide by Michael Berenstain. Stain. See, there's creatures. This book, as I stated in my new arrivals, my last entry of new arrivals, that this book has some pretty good value, the $60, $70 range. And thus, that's why I'm showing it. It's 1982 by Michael Berenstain. Berenstain, all rights, blah, 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 Pan American Copyright Conventions, Random House, etc., etc. In the light of flickering campfires, fearsome monsters took shape in the imagination of our earliest ancestors. They saw giants and dragons, werewolves and vampires, the dead rising from their graves. Even today, we are sometimes possessed with the same fears of unknown horrors lurking in the dark. For when the moon is full and the wind moans in the trees, it seems that anything might be. Men might turn into beasts, beasts into monsters, and anywhere a creature might awake. The Werewolf. Legends of human beings taking on beast shape are found throughout the world. There are tales of leopard men from Africa, tiger men from India, and jaguar men from South America. But the best known and most chilling of all is a legend that was once told all over Europe. The legend of the Wolfman, the werewolf. Today, there is little to fear in a wolf's howl, but it was once a sound that created pure terror in all who heard it. Wolf packs roam the wilds, stalking weak and unwary animals, and occasionally human beings. Some people believe these humans fell under the curse of the werewolf and were fated to turn into wolves when the moon was full. When there was no full moon, the werewolf looked like any other human being, but was marked by certain signs: hair on the palms, a five-pointed star on the chest. But once a month, when the moon shone full, the werewolf became a hideous mixture of man and beast. It prowled the night in search of human prey. Those who survived its attack were doomed, for anyone wounded by a werewolf became a werewolf too. The only cure was death by a silver musket ball fired through the heart. In most werewolf legends, the bullet was marked with a cross and had been blessed by a priest. Once dead, the werewolf was released from the curse and returned to his human form. That'll teach him, some bitch. The vampire. The vampire. A pale stranger standing at the bedside, a huge bat flitting across the moon. These were the forms taken by the vampire, the drinker of human blood. In 1897, Bram Stoker wrote a novel that made the vampire famous, Dracula, the story of the evil count from Transylvania. Now a part of Romania, though Count Dracula is fictional, there was, in fact, a count in 15th century Eastern Europe who was so cruel that he was known as Vlad the Impaler. This from his gruesome practice of killing his enemies with sharpened stakes. Though not a real vampire, Vlad may have been bloodthirsty enough to have inspired the Dracula legend. Vampires were believed to be the living dead because they could be turned into dust by the sun's rays. They had to lie deathlike in their coffins until the sun set. Some vampires hid their coffins in secret places. Those who had been buried in a graveyard had such supernatural power that they could open the coffin lid and leave their tomb, for when night fell, the vampire had to rise and seek its prey. Taking the form of a bat, it flew above the rooftops in search of human blood. Finding an open window, it swooped in and returned to human shape at its victim's bedside. Some people wore the sign of the cross and hung garlic around their windows and doors to keep the vampire away. This is still a custom in many countries, though its original purpose may be forgotten. Women were the favorite victims in popular vampire movies. and literature, but in old legends, no one was safe from the vampire's bite. The vampire's victims remembered being bitten only as a terrible dream. They wasted away for days and then died. The only signs of the cause of death were two tiny puncture marks on the neck. After death, the victims too became vampires. During the day, when the vampire was defenseless in its coffin, it could be destroyed by driving a sharpened wooden stake through its heart. When this was done, its evil soul died with a shriek and its body turned to dust. Its victims, who were still alive, were released from its curse. The Lamia. What the fuck is this? A race of legendary vampires, very different from Dracula, were the Lamia, the snake women of ancient Greece. Appearing at first in the form of a beautiful woman, a Lamia tempted young men with her charms. Once they were in her power, she revealed her true form, that of an evil, woman-headed serpent who fed on human blood. The Sphinx. The Sphinx, with her woman's head, lion's body, and eagle's wings, is best known as the Egyptian goddess of whom a giant statue was built near the pyramids, but she was also the subject of a famous Greek legend. She waylaid travelers near her mountain lair and asked them this riddle: what walks on 4 feet in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? The correct answer: man. In childhood he crawls, in manhood he walks, in old age he helps himself with a cane. None of the travelers could solve the riddle, so she ate them. Finally, a young man named Oedipus gave her the correct answer. Enraged, the Sphinx threw herself from a cliff and died. The Minotaur. A terrifying monster of Greek myth, the Minotaur had the head of a bull and the body of a man. He was kept in the labyrinth, an inescapable maze of twisting paths on the Isle of Crete, by King Minos, ruler of the island. Every 9 years, the city of Athens was forced to send 14 young men and women to Crete as a tribute to King Minos, who threatened to destroy Athens if this was not done. The doomed men and women were sent into the labyrinth, where they became hopelessly lost and were killed by the Minotaur. This sacrifice went on for many years until one year Theseus, the son of the king of Athens, volunteered to be one of the victims. Theseus tied one end of a ball of string to the entrance door and, unwinding the string as he went, walked boldly through the maze. He stalked the Minotaur and slew it with his bare hands. Then he followed the string back through the winding paths to the entrance. I mean, what's the point of killing him or what's the point of the string if you killed him? The beast folk of ancient Greece. Satyrs, these wild dwellers of wood and field, had the head and body of a man, but the legs and horns of a goat. Their leader was the god Pan. Centaurs, a race with the lower body of a horse and the upper body of a man. Though these creatures were savage and dangerous, one centaur named Chiron was renowned for his goodness and wisdom. Harpies. With the head of a woman and the body of an eagle, harpies were sent by the god Zeus to plague those who displeased him. Echidna, part woman, part reptile, she was the mother of many monsters, including the triple-headed dog of the underworld, Cerberus. She's kind of a MILF. And a dog mom. Get it? The dog mom. Medusa, once a beautiful maiden, Medusa was changed by an angry goddess into a gorgon, a monster with hair of living snakes. The beast folk of many lands. Manticore. This creature from India had a lion's body, a scorpion's tail, and the head of a man with triple rows of sharp teeth. Naga, similar to the Greek Lamia. These were a race of snake people who dwelt in a vast underground kingdom in India. The Borak, mule-bodied, peacock-tailed, and woman-headed, the marvelous beast from Arabia carried the Prophet Muhammad to heaven. Sekhmet, the Egyptian goddess of storms. She had the head of a lion and the body of a woman. She got the fucking guns of a wrestler, though. Anubis. This Egyptian god of the underworld had a man's body and a jackal's head. His special role was as the protector of mummies. Hey, they're there, the mummies. Mummies. The ancient Egyptians took great pains to preserve the bodies of their dead, creating the cloth the cloth-wrapped figures called mummies. Centuries later, these bodies were discovered and many legends sprang up about them. That they could have lasted so long undecayed seemed magical and led some people to believe that by magic they could be brought back to life. The myth of the revived mummy has become so familiar from the movies that it is hard to visit a museum without imagining that the lid of a mummy case will creak slowly open and a bandage-wrapped arm emerge. The Golem. A Jewish legend of the Middle Ages tells of a rabbi in Eastern Europe who created a gigantic monster out of clay. That would be Rabbi Lo, a golem, to protect the rabbi's people from their enemies. He brought the golem to life by writing the secret name of God on the creature's forehead. The golem could not speak, but it obeyed the rabbi's orders and saved the village from destruction. The Zombie. On the Caribbean island of Haiti, there is a strange religion, voodoo. One voodoo belief is that the corpses can be brought to life by a witch doctor's black magic to be used as slaves. They are called zombies, the living dead. Zombies move in a trance, eyes staring, doing only as they are told. They must be fed only the blandest foods, or they will wake from their trance and return to their graves. Frankenstein's monster. One night, many years ago, a young woman awoke from a strange dream about a hideous man-made man. The young woman was Mary Shelley, wife of the great English poet Percy Shelley. They and their friend, the English poet Lord Byron, had been telling each other ghost stories to pass the time during a rainy vacation. Inspired by her dream, Mary Shelley later wrote the novel Frankenstein, which was published in 1818 and became the most famous of all horror stories. In modern times, several Frankenstein movies were made, the best known being the 1931 Boris Karloff version. Mary Shelley's novel tells the story of Victor Frankenstein, a young scientist who seeks the secret of life. He succeeds in creating a living man from the parts of dead bodies. I saw the dull yellow eye of the creature open. It breathed hard, and a convulsive motion agitated its limbs. Horrified at the sight of his creation, the young scientist flees. When he returns, the monster is gone. Years later, the monster seeks out his creator. He has learned to speak and tells Victor Frankenstein of his unhappy life and the many people who have run from him in fear or tried to kill him. He demands that the scientist create a female to be his companion. If not, the monster swears to make Frankenstein as lonely as he. Frankenstein attempts the task, but afraid of creating a race of monsters, he destroys his work. Before it is finished, later Frankenstein marries, but on his wedding night, his bride is murdered by the monster. Vowing revenge, Frankenstein pursues the creature across Europe, into Russia, and onto the ice of the Arctic Ocean. Nearly frozen, Frankenstein is rescued by a ship. He tells the captain his story and then dies. The monster comes aboard and mourns the death of the only human who could have loved him, his creator. The monster then leaps onto the ice and is last seen running across the frozen Arctic wastes. The Cyclops. The Cyclops were a race of one-eyed monsters from Greek myth. Polyphemus, the most famous Cyclops, trapped the hero Ulysses in his cave. About to be eaten by the monster, Ulysses offered him an urn of wine. Unused to strong drink, the Cyclops gulped it down and fell fast asleep. Ulysses and his men sharpened a stake and put out the monster's eye. They fled to their ships and set sail, but the enraged Cyclops threw boulders blindly after them and sank all their ships but one. Katos. Another rock-throwing giant was Katos, the brother of Polyphemus. Unlike his brother, Katos had many arms and many heads and was the secret weapon of the god Zeus in his war with the Titans, standing on Mount Olympus, raining boulders down on the enemy from his many hands. Katos could not be beaten. Trolls. In the far north lived a race of large, clumsy creatures called trolls. They had furry ears and long tails. Though shy, they could be dangerous. In the story, the three billy goats Gruff, a troll who lives under a bridge, tries to eat anyone who crosses over. Most trolls, however, lived in caves or hollow trees. Goblins. These small, evil spirits haunted woods and fields. They led travelers astray by night and played tricks on the unwary. There were many ways to protect against goblins. One was to turn all of your clothes inside out. Dwarfs. Short but strong, legendary dwarfs were miners and metal workers. They lived to a great age, and all, even their womenfolk, had beards. I did not know that. Many of the magical weapons of olden times were of dwarf make. One, a war helmet called the Tarn Helm, made its wearer invisible to the enemy. Supernatural creatures of the British Isles. Elves, the most beautiful of all creatures in folklore. Elves lived in a world of their own called fairy. Though usually friendly, they played tricks on humans, and if offended, could be very dangerous. Leprechauns, found only in Ireland. Leprechauns wore three-cornered hats and made shoes. They were known for their riches. Each was said to possess a pot of gold. Puck, also known as Robin Goodfellow, this mischievous spirit loved to play pranks on humans. He was made famous in Shakespeare's play A Midsummer Night's Dream, in which he is a servant of the king of the elves, banshees, Irish death spirits who wailed when someone died, thus giving us the expression wailing like a banshee. They had long tangled hair and their eyes were always red from weeping. Fuka, or is it Puka, the Irish spirit who delighted in scaring people, took many forms: a horse, a bat, an eagle, and sometimes a black goat creature with glowing eyes. Fachin, the Fachin from Scotland, had one hand, one eye, and one leg. Little is known of its habits, but it was probably as dangerous as it was ugly. Kelpie, the Scottish water horse. Anyone foolish enough to ride a Kelpie was thrown into the water. Kelpies could be heard howling and wailing before storms. Booberry, a huge water bird that lived near lakes and ate sheep and cattle. Its call was like the roar of a bull. Dragons. Dragons are perhaps the most familiar and terrifying of all legendary creatures. They range from giant snakes to strange mixtures of many animals. Most often they were huge bat-winged lizard-like creatures. They usually had horns on their heads and stingers on their tails, and they breathed fire or poison gases. Dragons are nearly anything. Their favorite food. Dragons ate nearly everything. Their favorite food was beautiful maidens. Dragons were great lovers of wealth. Their dens were heaped with gold and jewels. They even slept on their treasure, guarding it night and day. The Hydra. When one of the Hydra's 9 heads was cut off, 2 grew in its place. To kill the beast, the Greek hero Hercules had to burn its necks closed as he cut off each head. Chinese dragons were thought to be friendly and to bring good luck. Instead of a roar, they made a sound like the beating of a gong. Dragons were carved into the thrones and embroidered into the robes of Chinese emperors. Royal dragons had 5 claws, others in China had only 4. Dragons and elephants. In the Middle Ages, people believed that dragons hunted elephants. According to Bestiary, T.H. White's version of an old book of beasts, the dragon, lying in wait near the paths along which the elephants usually saunter, lassos their legs in a knot with its tail. St. George and the Dragon. There was once a city that was plagued by a dragon who demanded that a maiden be given to him every day. The king ordered that all the maidens of the city draw lots to see who should be eaten first. To his horror, his own daughter was chosen. Left outside the city gates for the dragon to devour, the princess seemed doomed. But as the dragon approached, a knight, George of Lydda, appeared. He did battle with the dragon and slew him. For this deed, George was made a saint by the church. Though he was later made the patron saint of England, his battle with the dragon was said to have happened in North Africa in the 4th century. The Griffin. Beast with the body of a lion and the head, wings, and claws of an eagle. Griffins guarded golden treasures high in the mountains of Greece, India, and the Middle East. They laid jewels for eggs and raised their young. On horse meat, the claw of a griffin would change color when close to poison. The Rock is a story from the Arabian Nights. Sinbad, the sailor, was shipwrecked on a tropical isle. Seeing what he thought was a dome in the distance, he made his way toward it, but found that it was a giant egg, the egg of the Rock, a bird fabled for its enormous size and strength. Soon the roc returned to its nest and fell asleep. Sinbad tied himself to the roc's claw, and when it awoke, was carried unnoticed by the roc across the sea to the mainland. There Sinbad untied himself and escaped. The unicorn. The unicorn, according to ancient legend, the most beautiful and magical of beasts was the unicorn. Taking different forms throughout the ages, the unicorn most often had the body and head of a horse, the legs, tail, and beard of a goat, and a single spiral horn. The horn of the unicorn could purify water, and which was much sought after as a cure for poison. Until modern times, powdered unicorn horn was thought to be a cure for almost any ailment. Horns from other animals were often ground up and passed off as unicorn horn. Very strong and swift, the unicorn was almost impossible to trap, but there was a way to tame it. If a fair maiden, a princess, if possible, sat in a forest clearing and softly sang a magic song, the unicorn charmed would come and lay its head upon her lap. Fantastic monsters of the world. The basilisk, or cockatrice, was hatched not from the egg of a hen, but from that of a rooster. It could kill simply with its eyes or its hiss. It was terrified of a rooster's crow, but it could be killed only by a weasel or its own reflection in a mirror. The chimera, an ancient Greek monster, was part lion and part goat, and its tail was a snake. It breathed fire and was killed by the Greek hero Bellerophon. Riding the winged horse Pegasus, the Carcadon, this one-horned griffin-like beast from Moslem legend, was killed by Alexander the Great, called Iskander by the Muslims. A belt made from its hide was said to prevent sickness. The hama, a vampire bird of Arabia, it grew from the blood of a murder victim. It would not rest until it had drunk the blood of the murderer. Its call was, "Give me drink." The salamander, a lizard that lived in fire in medieval times, it was used as a symbol for fire in the magical art of alchemy. The real salamander was named after this mystical beast. Cerberus was the three-headed dog who guarded the gates of the underworld in Greek legend. The dead had to throw him a honey cake before he would let them enter. Pegasus, the beautiful white-winged horse of ancient Greece, was tamed and ridden across the sky by Bellerophon in his quest to slay the chimera. The questing beast from Sir Thomas Malory's story about King Arthur had the body of a leopard, a deer's feet, and a snake's head. Its name came from its call, which sounded like 40 hounds baying or questing. The phoenix was a bird of Arabia, the only one of its kind. Every 500 years it built a fire and burned itself to death. After 9 days it was reborn from its own ashes and began life anew. The catoblepus was a creature that looked like a pony covered with the scales of a reptile. It had large teeth and a hairy head. Mermaids. Mermaids were beautiful sea women from the waist up, but fish from the waist down. They were often seen sitting upon the rocks near shore, looking into a mirror, combing their long green hair. When they sang, their voices were sweet and pure, but their intentions were not. Many sailors, attracted by the mermaid songs, were lured to their death on the rocks. Merman. The menfolk of the sea, unlike mermaids, were very ugly. They had pointy red noses, bulging fish eyes, and sharp green teeth. They could raise storms at sea, but were not very dangerous to humans, preferring to ignore them completely. Selkies. Another of the sea folk, selkies were really seals, but at times they would rise from the waves, transform themselves into men, and come ashore. There was a great friendship between the selkies and the mermaids. There is a legend that a mermaid once died to save a seal's life, and that ever since, the selkies did all they could to help the mermaids. Sea serpents. Since ancient times, people have believed that giant serpents lived in the oceans of the world. It is one of the few old legends that many people still believe. Some have claimed that sea serpents are really dinosaurs that have survived in the unexplored depths. There were, in fact, dinosaurs that looked much like sea serpents, but all the dinosaurs died out millions of years ago. The chance that any still exist in the ocean's depth is very small indeed. Scylla. A three-headed sea monster from Greek legend, Scylla was once a beautiful maiden who was changed into a terrible monster by a jealous nymph. One of her body grew serpents with the heads of dogs who snatched sailors from passing ships. Cetus, a giant monster with a dolphin's body and a greyhound's head. He was slain by the Greek hero Perseus, whose winged sandals enabled him to fly over the water and whose magic cap made him invisible. The sea monk was said to have been caught off the coast of Norway in the Middle Ages. It had a human face and a fin like arms and legs. The sea monk was given to the king of Poland, who felt sorry for it and had it returned to the sea. The kraken was a legendary Scandinavian octopus or giant squid that slept on the seafloor for many years, then woke and destroyed passing ships with its tremendous tentacles. The Ogopogo Native American legend tells of a terrible snake-like sea creature living in lakes in western Canada. Many people claim to have seen it. It was said to have a whiskered, cow-like head. The Loch Ness Monster, the most famous of all sea serpents, this creature is supposed to live in Loch Ness, a very deep lake in Scotland. Most reports describe it as having a huge body, a long neck, and a small head. Like some of the ancient dinosaurs, modern-day scientists have tried to verify its existence but have failed. The Abominable Snowman. In the mountains of Tibet, there has always been legends of a demon called the Yeti who roamed the snowy heights. In modern times, several explorers have found strange ape-like footprints and pieces of hide that were said to have come from this creature. The footprints are unexplained, but the hide turned out to be from a goat. In spite of this very slim evidence, many people, even some scientists, believe that a huge ape does, in fact, exist in the Himalayan mountains. Bigfoot. Based on a Native American legend of a creature called Sasquatch, these ape men are supposed to live in the forest of the northwest United States and Canada, where they plunder isolated campsites and cabins. Plaster casts of huge footprints, films of the beast in the wild, and even an entire body kept in a block of ice have been shown as proofs of Bigfoot's existence. All of these proofs have turned out to be fakes. Balderdash. King Kong, one of the great monster legends of our time, came into being in 1933 when the movie King Kong was made. It tells of a giant gorilla who is found by a movie crew on a tropical island. As in the fairy tale Beauty and the Beast, the horrifying beast falls in love with a beautiful young woman, but the woman, part of the movie crew, does not return the beast's love. Kong is captured and brought back to New York in chains. He is billed as the eighth wonder of the world and put on display in a Broadway theater. Enraged by photographers' flashbulbs, he breaks the chains, escapes, and climbs to the top of the Empire State Building, carrying the young woman. There, he is attacked and finally killed by Army airplanes. Aliens! Modern technology has inspired tales of strange creatures in much the same way that early man's imagination sparked such legends in the past. Even before space travel became a reality, people were thinking about flights into outer space. They began to wonder what might be found on the moon, on Mars, and beyond. About 100 years ago, authors started to write about these and other questions in a new kind of story called science fiction. Most early science fiction was about wonderful inventions and marvelous journeys, but writers soon began to explore the idea that life might exist beyond the planet Earth. What forms would life take in outer space? The possibilities were unlimited. Thus, a new type of creature was born, the alien, a frightening being from another world. Selenites. Among the first writers to describe aliens was the English author H.G. Wells. In his book, The First Men in the Moon, he tells of two explorers who travel to the moon and in the anti-gravity sphere. They are captured by weird insect-like creatures, the Selenites, who live in vast cities inside the moon. The explorers are taken to the ruler of the Selenites, a being whose brain is so large that it dwarfs his useless body. Martians. In The War of the Worlds, one of the most famous science fiction novels ever written, Wells tells of an invasion of the Earth by octopus-like Martians. They arrive in huge cylinders that are at first thought to be meteorites. Though weak and clumsy, the Martians are able to conquer England with their advanced war machines. But though able to defeat humankind, they are defenseless against the Earth's smallest inhabitants, germs. All the Martians grow sick and die. Creatures of the universe. Tars Tarkas, the leader of the Green Men of Barsoom, Mars, created by Edgar Rice Burroughs, and Under the Moons of Man, A Martian is as imagined by Ray Bradbury in The Martian Chronicles. Bradbury's Martians wear silver masks and ride sharp, proud sand ships across the Martian deserts. Robot is a word coined by the author Karel Capek in his play RUR, meaning Rossum's Universal Robots. Since then, robots appeared as frightening automatons in many science fiction tales. Today, the word robot is used to describe many machines that operate automatically with human-like skill. Newts. Another Karel Capek creation, the newts are a race of giant salamanders that are found on a tropical island on Earth. Enslaved and educated by humans, they rebel and conquer the earth. Triffids, in a novel by John Wyndham, these giant flesh-eating plants take over the earth after all humankind is blinded by radiation from a meteor shower. The Blob, the subject of a classic science fiction movie made in 1958, begins life as a laboratory experiment. It grows into a quivering jellyfish-like being that consumes everything in its path. Athellini, a race of unicorn-like creatures from a story by Arthur C. Clarke. The Athellini are highly intelligent but have never learned the use of tools. Trolfomodorians, cosmic beings described by Kurt Vonnegut in Slaughterhouse-Five. The hero of the story claims to have been kidnapped by these creatures and displayed naked in a zoo on their planet. The Beast Within. Writers of science fiction usually deal with creatures from outer space, but some authors have created strange creatures to make political or psychological statements about human nature itself. For who knows what darkness lurks inside the human soul. Yahoos. In Jonathan Swift's 18th century Gulliver's Travel, the hero comes to a land where horses ate the intelligent rulers and humans are brute and animal-like. Gulliver is repelled by these brutes called Yahoos and finds the intelligent horses to be better companions. After returning to his own civilization in England, he still prefers horses to people. The Island of Dr. Moreau, a novel by H.G. Wells that tells of a doctor who hides on a tropical island and conducts a series of grisly experiments in an attempt to turn animals into men and women. He partially succeeds, but his creations slowly return to their animal state, turn on Dr. Moreau, and kill him. Morlocks, in another Wells work, The Time Machine, an inventor travels forward in time and finds that the human race is split into two branches, the beautiful sun-loving Eloi and the ape-like tunnel-dwelling Morlocks. The Morlocks, he learns, are the ruling race, raising the Eloi like cattle and killing them for food. And Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Robert Louis Stevenson, the author of many exciting adventure stories for children, wrote this horrifying tale of a scientist, Dr. Jekyll, who discovers a chemical that will separate good from evil within the human soul. Dr. Jekyll tries the formula on himself and becomes the hideous Mr. Hyde. As Mr. Hyde, he commits many crimes but escapes justice by drinking the formula and returning to the form of Dr. Jekyll, but he soon finds that he is turning into Mr. Hyde even without taking the drug. In order to change into Dr. Jekyll, he must take larger and